In terms of this evening, this is an alumni event. What I term it though, it's for people connected to Henley in the past, the current students, and future contacts. So we're delighted in that we've got guests in that here this evening, and great for you to come along to future events and stuff like that. Ashok,
thank you.
Come and tell us about business transformation.
Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. Digital transformation is something, I think everybody is kind of chatting about. We were talking about it just outside, and one really wonders, what is this digital transformation and what does this really mean? And so I'm going to try and share with you over maybe the next 20 odd minutes as to what it means for us at Barclays. Just by way of introduction, I am the CEO of Barclays UK. Barclays UK is the ring-fenced bank for Barclays in the UK. I've been in banking a long time, longer than Johan and Andrew have been doing the MBA. I've born and brought up in Bombay, but I've moved around a lot. I was first about 20 years with Citigroup. Started off in Dubai, Istanbul, Brussels, New York, Singapore. Went back to New York with a private equity firm for about 3 years, and for the last 8 years or so I've been with Barclays, which includes about a year and a half running Africa. So I always say, thank God there are not too many banks in Siberia, otherwise maybe I'd have been posted to Siberia as well. Anyway, for the last 3 or 4 years, last 5 years or so, I would say have been the most fascinating period, at least in my career, because of the kind of changes that have been going through financial services and how we've been coping with it. And that's the journey that I want to kind of talk about this evening. First things first, it became evident quite a while ago that financial services was very ripe for disruption. We saw it in books, we saw it in music, we saw just companies getting decimated with the arrival of online kind of merchants. Luckily for the financial services industry, really luckily for the financial services industry, we had the regulator. The regulator is what has saved the industry from getting completely decimated and allowing us to buy some time to actually transform ourselves, right? Even today, 5 or 6 years into the journey, maybe 15 or 25 years since broad adoption of the internet, none of the big tech companies, not Facebook, not Apple, not Google, not Amazon, none of the big guys want to get into the plumbing of finance, right? They're so scared of getting into the plumbing of finance and spending time with regulators. They say, you guys do that, we're going to try and do everything else, right? And so that's a very interesting kind of thing. And usually when you talk to somebody who's from a bank, they would tell you, well, the regulators have made our life miserable. I would submit every banker should thank the regulator for giving us the time to be able to make the transition. So what exactly is digital transformation, right? Now, the common thing, of course, everybody looks at is your app, right? So you send out an app, and your app does a whole bunch of things, bells and whistles, and all kinds of stuff on the app. I would submit that is the smallest part of the whole digital transformation, right? Putting out a front-end app, how much ever work that is actually the smallest part. But you've got to think about the implications of that, right? So I'll give you an example. So just think about this. In 2012, that's about 6 years ago, Barclays, and frankly no other bank in this country actually had a mobile app. I don't know how many of you remember .mobi, right? .mobi was the best or the closest thing you got to being able to do something on a mobile phone. So the app world came a little later, and we launched our Barclays app early 2013, right? Now, In 2012, if you ask me how many customer interactions I had, I would have about 1 million customer interactions a month. That's people walking into the branch, our branches, and people calling us on the phone. That would be about 1 million kind of customer interactions in any given month. Roll the dice forward 5 years, right? Today, let's say 4 years, 2017. In December of 2017, guess how many customer interactions I'm now having? Can anybody take a guess how many customer interactions we could have in a month? Any wild guesses?
20 million.
Sorry?
20 million.
20 million, go higher. 100 million, go higher. It's 151 million. 151 million transactions that the customer is connecting with us every single month. Now, obviously, most of that is on the mobile. About 140 million of that is on the mobile, 141 to be exact. Branch is down a little bit, as you would suspect. The phones have actually come down. But things like video, things like chat have gone through the roof, right? Where the customers are now talking to us in very, very, very different ways. So can you imagine with 151 million kind of customer interactions every single month, our need to be there, 24/7, literally 24/7, is absolutely critical. Absolutely critical. The customer does not think at all, right, that today is a Sunday evening, or it's very late on Saturday night, or whatever. The customer just doesn't believe that. So we've got to gear up. And how do you make that resilience so high that basically you're never down, right? And that's a very, very high standard. That's a very high standard to kind of maintain. There's maintenance, there's change, all of that kind of stuff, that's going to maintain, right? So even the front end, actually, a lot of work which you do on the front end really translates into a lot of things in terms of tech resilience. Of course, cybersecurity is hugely important, and I know some of you in the audience actually work with cybersecurity, so you know what that is. But just front end is not enough. Now, when you're getting so many customer interactions and you're getting so much of this kind of stuff, right? The customer has got used to living life in a certain way, right? The customers got used to living life, they're taking out a mobile app and getting everything done. They shop on Amazon, they connect with their friends on Facebook, right? They post instantly on Instagram. The minute they post, they're looking for how many likes they got, right? Who else is interacting with them? They're getting used to living in the age of instant gratification, right? We were talking outside just before we came in. You walk out on Uber, right? You don't have to do anything else. You don't have to pay or anything. The customer got conditioned to have life very, very, very easy. And therefore, you can't expect the customer to change the way the customer works, behaves, just because they're getting into financial services. So they need that same level of ease, and they need that same level of instant gratification, and they need that same level of comfort that whatever they wanted to do got done. So can you imagine getting onto a mobile app and saying, transfer money from one account to the other, and the mobile app says it'll get done in 6 hours or it'll get done tomorrow? The customer will simply not accept that. The customer expects it to be done instantly, which therefore means that in addition to digitization of the front end, you need to automate the processes right back completely to the back end, right? So customer journey automation is become a big, big deal and is a significant heavy lift. That whenever the customer does anything in the front end of the house, it has to go right back, right, and get done and get over with. Now, with so many customers coming online or getting on the mobile phone and doing things, obviously branch footfall is falling. Our ability, when a customer used to walk into the branch, to have a conversation with the customer, engage the customer, understand what else the customer wanted to do, right? And therefore talk to the customer about catering to the other needs, is also rapidly declining. But you can't allow your production to decline. And therefore getting really, really smart about how you're going to do things in the front of the house when the customer comes in and capture that customer's attention in a very, very short period of time. What does that mean? That means building of propensity models which have got a far higher degree of accuracy. Those propensity models have to then translate into prompts in real time when the customer has given you 3 or 4 seconds of his or her attention while on the app. If the customer buys into that, locks into that, you need instant fulfillment. And that fulfillment has to go end to end. And therefore, while the first stage of this whole journey of digital transformation is digitization or front-end digitization, the second most important thing is automation. So automating the whole place, right, is critical. Now, when I say automation, it's not only automation of the customer journey, like I talked about. It's the automation of the sales process. Frankly, it is automation of the entire control estate. Is the whole place working exactly as you want it to work? Because the friction which has been removed allows for people who are, like, let's say, fraudsters to exploit the system as well. So when you're taking out friction, so earlier on, when you went to the bank and you gave a letter and said, make a payment and pay so and so, right? There was a whole bunch of series of checks that would happen. Is the money in the account? Does your signature match? Should I call you back and get a confirmation that yes, you really want to make this payment and stuff like that. In this day and age, if you call the bank and say, or if you go into a mobile app and say, pay Andrew X, and if I'm waiting for another call to come back from the bank, come on, that's impossible. But I've removed friction and I've paid Andrew immediately, instantly, in real time. Literally that happens in real time. But then what happens is the fraudsters get very smart about this as well. And so we have a lot of problems in this country around mule accounts. A lot of it with students who are leaving the country, where they literally say, I'm leaving the country, who really cares? They rent their accounts out to the fraudsters. The fraudsters move the money from one account to the other, and then through these various mule accounts, take the money out of the system. And the money moves at such rapid speed that it's very difficult to kind of control, right? So while we used to have controls on money going out, now we're starting to have controls on money coming in, right? Does this represent a transaction which actually raises the potential of risk or not? And therefore, when we talk about customer journey automation, it's not only about removal of friction, it is then raising the antenna so that you know as to what's really happening and are you getting this right or are you getting it wrong. So that's the second piece. The third piece in all of this is if you're really going to be talking about instant prompt, instant fulfillment, customer journey automation and stuff like that, what's become really, really evident is that we have to get our data equation right. We have to get our data equation right, and therefore how a bank organizes data is a really, really important thing. Now, when back in the days when I was at Citi, I used to have many conversations at management meetings, which went something like this: should we be customer centric or should we be product centric? Should we be first class in every single product that we sell? And we had many discussions and we came to the conclusion that being first class in every single product you sell is the right way to go. Because if you're first class in a card, and you're first class in mortgages and first class in checking, then the customer would just choose you over anybody else, right? Technology has fundamentally changed that. When you built the bank by being first class by product, what you did is you said, I don't really care about what totality of information the customer has to give me. I just want to be first class in this one particular product. So let me get the data required for this particular product, right? And if I can solve with, let's say, 6 elements of data to give you this particular kind of product, so be it. I'm not going to take another four elements of data which is going to help some other product. Every product has become first class in their own right. So all the banks have grown up as product siloed factories. Now in this day and age, the customer's willingness to give you that same data again is actually, is very, very frustrating. The customer said, I thought you knew. I expect you to know. And if I expect you to know, why are you asking me this data again? Right? Who is going to fill in 16 digits of a credit card or debit card over and over and over again? One click Amazon, what do they do? Right? They've kind of found a way to store that data and use that data again. PayPal, what have they been able to do? Essentially speaking, the same thing. And they built a whole business, not Amazon, but PayPal has actually built a whole business out of that kind of capability. And therefore getting the data right and re-architecting the entire platform. Re-architecting the entire platform around creating a true data warehouse, which, by the way, is in the olden days, the data warehouse used to have a fixed number of columns, fixed number of rows, Oracle database, and all of you would have kind of seen this. The new technology, which is Hadoop and stuff like that, allows you to have databases in a completely different way. So how you bring in this and create these data platforms, data architectures, data standards, the most important thing is keeping the data updated. How do you recognize and actually tag the data that you have on every customer, and when that tag goes out of date, actually incentivize the customer to give you updated data, becomes an absolutely fundamental need if you're going to kind of try and cater to the customer. So getting the data equation right becomes critical. In the good old days, we used to have the mainframe, and in the mainframe, when 2 million customers came and interacted with me, I used to, for every single customer interaction, go and ping the mainframe. If today, at 150 million transactions, I go and ping the mainframe, IBM would be a very rich company, I would be dead out of the water. So reconfiguring the way we actually think about data requests from the customer, using that data and getting down is a very, very important thing. Of course, the next step to all of this is clearly, if you've got the data, if you've got all this transactional data, what are you doing with it to try and make it really, really savvy, right? And that's where we get into, say, how do you use machine learning to become much, much savvier about the customer? But for using a machine learning, the first thing you got to do is you got to be able to put that data into the cloud. Because just such large amounts of data, trying to run them on-prem is going to kill you from a cost perspective. Plus, it's not lost on us, right? Would the best infrastructure people rather join AWS, Google, Azure, Alibaba Cloud, and stuff like that, or would they come to a bank, right? Clearly, the best infrastructure people are going to go where there is cutting edge kind of work going on, right? And therefore, we are seeing in front of our eyes, our capability to run infrastructure starting to erode. And this is going to happen at tremendous speed. So we've got to find a way to take our stuff to the cloud and actually carry our regulators with us. The regulators are nervous about it, right? But kind of, how do you convince the regulators that I'm going to take my entire bank to the cloud, right? And start running the operation in the cloud. But what is my real purpose of going to the cloud? To get deeper insights into my customers. Those deeper insights into customers will then be able to translate into things like that. Like I talked about, the better prompts, the better fulfillment and stuff like that. Having said that, it's really, really important to not get just completely very excited about things like artificial intelligence and machine learning. The downstream impacts of this have to be studied very carefully. The ethical aspects of artificial intelligence are very important. And we have to stay on top of it to at least be able to understand what that particular model is doing, what that particular algo is doing, and that no unnecessary biases are kind of creeping in without us even knowing. And that's very common. I mean, I don't know if you've heard about Facebook setting up two artificial intelligence engines going against each other, and after a while, the Facebook engineers had no clue as to what these guys were really doing. Well, that's scary kind of stuff, right? And as regulators, the regulators are going to ask us as to how we're really doing that. But therefore, getting the data right and thinking about the data, thinking about the use cases, how we transport just the infrastructure, taking to the cloud is, at relatively the easier part. The most important part is then going to be how are you going to develop those algorithms, how are you going to use those algorithms, and be able to do that in real time to spot the kind of transactions or to do the kind of underwriting which you really want to do. So to my mind, that's the third element of digital transformation. The fourth element of digital transformation is convincing your key stakeholders. We talked a little bit about regulators. Let me spend a couple of minutes on investors, right? So I stand up in front of investors and I say, oh, by the way, I'm doing a lot of work on digital transformation. Guess what? All my competition, all fintechs are telling my investors exactly that. And my investors are starting to say, well, they've been saying for 1 year, look, you seem like, a smart enough guy, you say all the right words, where the hell is it showing up in your P&L? How do I know you're doing a smarter thing, a better thing than anybody else? Now that is a very difficult question to answer because we are currently in a dual transformation kind of way. Dual transformation in multiple kind of aspects. Dual transformation because A, I'm trying to shut down a whole bunch of legacy systems. I'm shutting down a whole bunch of legacy infrastructure. I'm shutting down a whole bunch of branches where the volume has kind of fallen behind, right? And shifting to a new way of doing it. But remember, for every branch I shut down, there were a lot of conversations with customers I had in those branches. So it's not entirely a positive. I have to find ways to kind of supplement that and get smart about doing those things in the online space, right? And therefore, being able to point to what does the digital transformation mean in a financial sense, right? Where does it show up on the revenue line? Where does it show up on the cost line? And where does it show up even on the impairment line becomes really important. And trying to show that underlying kind of thing is, the trend is, and segregating out what does the future look like is important. In this, it's not lost on us, it's not lost on anybody, that this is an arms race. There is no, it's difficult for me to stand up and say, I'd be foolish to stand up and say, you know what, in 3 years my digital transformation is done. My understanding of what digital transformation is currently takes my plan out to 2.5 years, or maybe even 3 years. But I absolutely know that in 6 months, that plan would have got extended by maybe another year because I've learned that much more, right? And have to do much more, right? If in 6 months I'm not being able to understand what's next, my God, I should be fired, right? Because then I'm not understanding the pace of change that is happening in the industry. This is a really, really important point, and I'll come back to it in just a moment. So then the fifth element is really all about what are the new business models? Because technology, for the sake of technology, or technology is just replacing what we have done in the past, is not going to deliver on the kind of results that the investors want. There have to be new business models that kind of emerge out of this, and then how do we monetize those new business models is really critical. So one example, for those of you who may have seen, we've launched something called Smart Business. What is Smart Business? Smart Business is essentially a dashboard that allows businesses to not only monitor their financial kind of transactions, cash flow, of course, is a big deal for small businesses. So the banking forms, let's say, the core kernel of the Smart Business dashboard, but it allows that business owner a series of apps which the business owner can pull and run the entire business of a portal. Now, we launched this a couple of months ago. We've got 26,000 businesses on that portal already, and allows them to pull all kinds of things, right from marketing, website development, tax. We provide them insights on their business, PayPal, a whole bunch of apps you can pull, and you can kind of get your business going. This is a new business model, right? And with the advent of things like open banking and stuff like that, frankly, you ask yourself the question, why would you restrict it only to Barclays banking? Why would you open it up? As long as you own the customer, right? Let anybody else, let the customer plug in anybody else. Or if it's a multi-bank customer, which as the business grows, usually it does become a multi-bank customer. How do you kind of pull it together? Because the value of the data, the value of the relationship with the customer is so important. right? So this is a classic example of a new age business model which would only be available because of the technology. And we can talk about, 3 or 4 more of such things. But this creation of a platform and the ownership of the customer, and yet being open, I think is the hallmarks of those kind of new business models. Which then brings me to my last point around the digital transformation. And that is really, again, it's not lost upon me. If you take the FTSE or you take the Dow Jones or whatever, companies that remain within the Dow Jones index, used to be a company would remain on the Dow Jones index for 50 years, 60 years, 70 years. Now it's like coming down to 15, 20 years. If you make it 20 years in the Dow Jones index, wow, you're doing kind of great, right? I work with a company today that's 328 years old, right? We are older than the United States of America. We are older than the Bank of England, right? And for 328 years, we've been kind of growing. The good news is change is in our DNA. We have been changing for the last 328 years. We know what it means to change because we've been doing it for the last 328 years. We've seen the Great Plague, we've seen the global financial crisis, we've seen the recession in the 1920s, we've seen 2 world wars, we've seen a lot of that kind of stuff. So change is in our DNA, right? But the responsibility of really continuing to keep that DNA and adapting to the future is what is critical. And every big company has the capability of throwing money at technology. The amount of money the financial services industry, this is a fact, the amount of money financial services as an industry is throwing at technology is more than the money big tech is throwing at technology. I'm not talking about marketing and other stuff. I'm talking about pure technology spend. And the amount of money financial services is spending on technology is more than what big tech is spending on technology. So you can see the astounding amounts of money that is being spent. The most important thing is how do you move the mindset and culture of the organization. If you're not able to move the mindset and culture of the organization, in my view, you're dead. To my mind, setting up a separate unit which basically says, hey, you guys are the only digital guys, you guys go and build it out, right? Now think about it. Just assume we are the senior management of a company. And let's just assume we say, hey, Andrew and I, we are pals, we do all the cool stuff, right? We're doing all the new cool stuff, the digital stuff. You guys go on, stay with the old stuff. Every one of you is going to look for every opportunity to bring Andrew and I down, right? Because you don't want to be considered non-cool. You don't want to be considered as, managing the old. So we've got to get everybody in the organization to think digital. I feel really happy when my competitors announce we're going to get a chief digital officer. Or I get really excited when my competitors announce we're going to get a chief innovation officer. Man, you're dead out of the water. Because the minute you have a chief innovation officer, by definition, everybody else is not innovative, right? Call me not innovative, I don't like it, right? And so the culture and the mindset. The other thing around this is it's not sufficient. It is not sufficient for just a particular team to be digital. Compliance has to be digital. In fact, compliance, legal, the control functions, they've got to be way ahead of the game. What's the point of a compliance person telling me 3 years down the road, hey Ashok, by the way, you screwed up 3 years ago. Yeah, well, sure. What's the point of that? Tell me when I'm doing it. Don't tell me 3 years out. Any idiot can tell me 3 years out. Right? If you're smart and you're doing your job, you will be telling me today, think about these kind of things. And if you can tell me about these kind of things, there's kind of value. Our investor relations team, right? Our investor relations team has to be digitally savvy. Because they've got to be able to talk to our investors and have these kind of conversations at this level of fluency. That's when the investors will believe that the company is on the digital transformation. That's when the investors will believe that, yeah, these guys get it. If your investor relations people can't talk about it, they're dead out of the water, right? And therefore, moving the culture and the mindset, the entire organization, right, along this path is so critical. So that's what digital transformation really has meant for us. It's been a learning journey. Like I said, if I don't keep learning, there's no staying stagnant. You're either dead or you're moving ahead, right? Therefore, I'm sure when I come back, I'll say, I didn't think of this and I didn't think of that. But that's what it is. And with that, happy to open it up to any questions that anyone may have.
Thank you, Ashok, for the stimulating sort of thought piece. You didn't use your line about you're a technology business with a balance sheet. Ashok, when I first met him, that was his line that he was going out.
I've got 3 lines around technology now. The first line is exactly this, that we are a technology company with a balance sheet. 2, technology is too important to be left to the technologists, right?
Yeah.
So that's very, very true. And 3 is that technology is no longer a vertical, it's horizontal.
Yeah.
Right? And so.
Yeah. Good. Right. Any questions on that from the audience? I'm sure there's. Go to the back here for start.
It was interesting you mentioned big tech at the beginning. I was just wondering, do you think PSD2 and open banking is like inherently unfair, and you should have access to their data in the same way as they now have access to yours?
Yeah, and I think that will come, right? I definitely think that will come. I think the regulators are being kind of cautious about it. But if they are forcing us to share our data, there's no reason why we shouldn't have their data to be able to get that better kind of definition, right? Big tech is an interesting kind of thing. I think people are now waking up to the fears of big tech, and having lived through the way financial services lost trust in 2007, 2008, 2009. I really wonder whether this is the moment for big tech and with all they're doing. I mean, with GDPR, just look at all the emails you got, right? And look at all the emails, look at the data they're collecting on you. It's bloody scary, right? So I think it'll happen.
Another question over here.
You started by talking about the re-education of the customer based on digital technology. When you stand in front of the investors, give us a sense of how you need to talk about the alliances that you'll need to be making to keep up with that kind of pace of change that you've indicated that you're under that pressure.
Yeah. Honestly speaking, whenever we're with investors, what I've seen is all they're looking for is some data which they can plug into their worksheets, right? All they're looking for is, okay, so what will this P&L look like? And you can tell them everything else and they say, yeah, that's interesting. Now tell me, how is your balance sheet going to move? How's your margins going to move? What's going to happen to your costs, right? And if they can kind of walk away from there. So it becomes a very, very difficult conversation around this dual transformation, right? Conceptually they get it, but then they always want to come back because they've got their models and they need to key in the numbers into the models which spits out the answer of what's your EPS and therefore what they expect the target share price to be, right? If you don't give them that data, they get into real trouble. They just keep on going with you with that.
I bet they got a very good mark on their MBAs and that, but I don't think they're seeing the future. That's the challenge, because
that's exactly right.
You and I've talked about China in terms of the likes of Alipay, the likes of WeChat Pay. You talk about your 151 million per month. So Alipay and WeChat got 700 million users online every day, and Ant Financial. Potential valuation at the moment, 4 times your valuation?
5.
Yeah. So it's scary what's going to happen in those areas and the way they're coming. Question over here.
Yeah, I like the dialogue between customer journey and really changing that digital transformation. With the open banking, a little bit to the other question, on PSD2, there are definitely new business models that can be brought around that. But I think there's a balancing aspect to that with GDPR you alluded to, but also AML. So where do you see the opportunities are, and how are you going to balance the getting it right for the customer?
Okay, so if I look at it from my perspective, so obviously everybody tells you open banking, fintechs are going to come and they're going to eat your lunch and stuff like that. Just as an aside, before I get to your question, about 36 months ago, it was all, your toast. The challenges are going to come and eat your lunch and stuff like that. Is it okay? So we kept trying and stuff like that. Now the challenges are kind of realizing that they are, getting scale is not that easy, and that's why you heard about the CYBG Virgin kind of merger. About 24 months ago, or 18 months ago, everybody would come and say, "Man, you're toast again. The fintechs, they're going to kill you, right? The fintechs are going to completely kill you. You incumbents have no choice, no chance, and stuff like that." And they finally figured out that we made progress as well, and the fintechs, if they want to scale, they think it's much better to partner with us rather than kind of take us on. Nowadays, I meet anybody and they say, "Oh, big tech is going to kill you, right? You're dead. You're toast. Big tech is going to kill you." Now, not to be, I hope the past kind of trend continues. Not that I'm not paranoid. I'm paranoid about all these communities, but if you think about it and you say there are 63 million people in this country, and if you humor me for a moment and say 15 million are under the age of 15, that leaves 48. I have some kind of relationship with 24 million. Some of it is very, very shallow, some of it is very, very deep. But what I do know is, if I can just do more business with my 24 million customers, I can at the very least double the size of my business, right? So I'll give you just one simple statistic. The 24 million customers who do business with me, they have mortgages with me for about 114 billion. But if I take those 24 million customers and I add up all the mortgages that they have on the credit bureau, that number is 430 billion. 140 with me, 430 on the total, right? If I can just convince these 24 to do more business with me, I can grow the size of my business quite significantly. That's where things like open banking is a real opportunity. The question is, like before with the fintechs and with the challenger banks, how quickly can we adopt to make it really easy for a customer to do business with us, right? And to your point around KYC and AML and stuff like that, we have already done that, right? So an existing customer of mine, I don't need to do KYC AML again. As long as I'm doing the KYC and AML at a customer level and not at a product silo level, right? And therefore, this product centricity to customer centricity shift is such an important factor. But if I can get that right, and I'm doing it at a customer level, I'm able to use my data to actually pre-populate as much as possible, make it really easy for the customer. Frankly, there's no reason why the customer shouldn't do more business with it. Right? Now, business models will evolve, no question. Competition will of course evolve. We have to evolve. I'm not saying it's a slam dunk, right? But I look upon this as a significant opportunity for us to move the needle. GDPR will help us in that regard.
And I understand for the 24 million that you currently have, but are you looking to, with your experience and the technology you've already got, is get extra customers from other banks?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. See, look, it's very interesting. Obviously, you know that a lot of people spend time on the mobile on things like YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. There are like 4 or 5 apps which constitute. We figured out that dwell time on the Barclays mobile app is the 6th highest across all the apps in the country. So I'm talking including Facebook, WhatsApp, LinkedIn, YouTube, all of this kind of stuff. The amount of time a person is spending on the mobile app, right? So in fact, the metric is not how many logins, the metric is dwell time. Because the more that customer is dwelling on that app, the more opportunities I have to talk to that customer about other stuff.
Last couple of questions, Enzo.
Hi, Ashok.
Hi.
I've got a couple of questions, if
Sure.
that's all right. You mentioned that the relationship with the customer is so important, but yet you're closing branches. So what do you say to customers that actually are using their local branch, and what kind of discussions do you have with them? The second part of the question is around the fact that you're talking about using technology in this digital transformation area, mainly for your customers, for immediate transactions and secure global payments. How far has Barclays gone in looking at distributed ledger technologies like blockchain to service that?
Okay, so first let me take your question around the branches, right? So look, I'll be the first one to tell you that branches are not going to disappear in my lifetime. Okay, branches will be around. what the size, the shape, the format, what happens in a branch will change, but branches will not go away, right? Just think about this, right? Just think about this. The mighty Apple spends God knows how many billions of dollars a year opening Apple stores all across the world. Why the hell is Apple opening Apple stores when it is largely a tech company? Frankly, there's no differentiation. You know, it's not as if you can get an iPhone X other than the color, which is silver, white, or black, right? It's not as if it's not like, you know, getting a suit which needs to be tailored or whatever, right? It's a pretty standard kind of product. Yet, Apple is spending billions of dollars opening Apple stores, right? Jeff Bezos, the king of online retailing, the founder of Amazon, the one who's destroyed, you know, people are so scared of Jeff and Amazon. He's put down how much? $19 billion to buy Whole Foods. Partly the reason of buying Whole Foods was, of course, getting into the grocery business, but partly it is about building retail storefronts. So therefore, I'm very, very, very clear that branches is not going to disappear. Okay? The size and scale of the branches may change. What is the cost dynamics of a branch, right? Is obviously the number of customers who we can service, the kind of conversation we have. What we would really like to do is to automate as much as possible the routine transactional stuff. You know, my salary is credited, my bills are paid, my checks are deposited and stuff like that. But you want to free up the time for people in our branches to be able to really have those conversations, right? Whether those conversations are around advice, so somebody who's not savvy at financial services, right, wants to talk about the important moments in their life, right? Important moments can be, oh, I've just been hit with a fraud. Important moments can be, I'm going to college, now how should I think about it? I'm retiring, I want to save, I want a mortgage, right? And this is not just for people who are not savvy about financial services. I was in financial services many years before I came to the UK. Yet when I came to the UK and I wanted a mortgage, I needed to sit down with somebody and say, okay, so how does a mortgage work in the UK? Right? I still needed that face-to-face interaction. Right? So then the question is, where you're closing your branches, what are you doing? First step, what are you doing to automate and scale so that the transactional stuff goes away? Right? And that we've been, you know, aggressively at it. Now, even there, if you open our mobile banking app, you've got two or three buttons. One button is, of course, you can do chat. So you do secure chat with somebody at the other end, make it much easier. The second button is something called a smart call. You press that button, you go straight into what we call the Sky branch, not contact center. I can get into that discussion separately. That call then goes as a verified, authenticated call. So I don't again ask you what's your dog's name, what's the last mortgage payment, all that kind of stuff. And the third one is a video call, where if you open it up, you actually see a person face to face, right? So you can talk to a person, you see a person face to face, you get whatever you want. You want a mortgage, you want to sit down, maybe with your partner, right? You want to sit in your living room, talk about, you know, the home. Fine, we can do it on that video, and that actually works quite well, right? Then you'll ask me, oh, so what happens where communities don't have Wi-Fi and broadband, digital deserts that we have in this country? We worked with BT, we put digital hubs into community centers, so that happens. Then you may ask me, what the hell, not everybody knows how to do digital, people are scared about online banking, this thing. I hope you've seen our advertisements around our Digital Eagle program. We've got 16,000 Digital Eagles in our branch network who are willing to talk to anybody, whether they're a Barclays customer or not a Barclays customer, on anything to do with digital, not banking, right? You come and you want to kind of learn how to do digital shopping. You come, you want to learn how to use Google Maps. You come, you want to learn how to use Amazon. The Digital Eagle will help you do that, right? So we will go to every extent to try and say, we're going to make your life easier. Whatever you want to do it from the comfort of your home. Of course, if you want to come into our branches, you are more than welcome. But we don't want to waste your time. We don't want to force you to come, right? We were the first bank that did check imaging on the phone. We're the first bank that will go and scale it. So you never again will have to visit a branch to deposit a check. Just take a photograph and you're done, right? So that's the kind of thing which we're kind of doing. So that's the extent which we'll go to make that happen.
The last question then is to address the blockchain.
Blockchain. Yeah. So look, blockchain is a very interesting technology. A lot of the attention has been taken up on things like Bitcoin and, you know, all the cryptocurrencies and stuff like that. The blockchain is actually a very interesting technology. My submission is, as of now, it's a solution that's still looking for a problem. We haven't found the problem to solve as yet. Right? We did trade finance. By the way, we were the first bank to do a trade finance on the blockchain between Barclays Seychelles and Barclays London. If I really take you through how we did that transaction, you will really laugh, because it's far from that technology kind of driven. We're still looking for that ideal. It will happen, I'm sure. But as of now, it's not there as yet.
So can we have to draw it to a close here, because we're going to have time to do some networking there outside, so you can have individual questions and that, so we need to allow time for that. So can we thank you very much.